I think when it comes to Kalani Sitake and BYU football, we're just going to stop doubting them. Maybe I'm speaking for myself, but I'm sure there's a lot of people that did not expect an 11-2 season in 2024. And there are probably some people that do not expect them to repeat that success in 2025. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the BYU Cougars to see what we should expect from this team this season. Now, last year, again, I think a lot of people were expecting a solid year, but nobody saw 11-2 coming outside of BYU's program. So Taki deserves a lot of credit for what he did, and getting his team to play at the level they did was very impressive. Now, one of the ways they did that was a defense that played lights out at times, and Jay Hill deserves a lot of credit for that, but bringing him in was one of the better decisions that Stocky made. And you saw the results. You saw a group that was much better defensively and really shut teams down. And that could be the same this year. We'll obviously break that down, what we should expect from both sides, but that defense should be really fun to watch once again if the offense can prove themselves as well. The changes to this team, there's not a ton of departures, which is really nice, at least not a ton of important departures. Losing Keelan Marion late in the transfer portal process was kind of the big one that everyone would talk about, just because he brought so much to multiple parts of that offense and special teams. Losing Darius Laster, we obviously knew that was going to happen. The defense loses a couple of big players, Tyler Batty, Harrison Tager, Jacob Robinson. Other than that, I don't have a ton of guys that I necessarily feel that they lost that are massive losses. And that should be a good thing for BYU in trying to win football games in the Big 12. They also didn't bring in a ton of talent, but they definitely didn't need to. With the talent that they had on campus already, they were very selective about what they brought in. They addressed the trenches. Obviously, the defensive tackle position was a big need for them. The tight end position, kind of the same thing. So they brought in a couple players that are really interesting, and they bring in two Bachmeyers that should be very interesting contributors, maybe this year or maybe next year. So that's a team that knows what they're doing in recruiting, in terms of they may not get the top recruiting classes, but they're bringing in the right guys that fit their culture, that fit what they want to do, and they're keeping them on campus. That's a big thing for sustained success in 2025, and Satake and this Cougars team have got that dialed in. The offense is going to be interesting. There's been obviously some developments in the offseason that will affect this, but Jake Retzlaff being able to play is going to pretty much dictate how successful this team is. Now, we're not going to dive into what's going on there. You can Google it if you want. But if Jake Retzlaff is able to play, that makes this team better. If not, that's where things could get a little bit dicier. You, like I said, you brought in Bear Bachmeyer. You brought him in as a freshman quarterback. You'd like to not play him right away, but maybe that has to be an option depending on how things sort themselves out. McKay Hillstad is probably the go-to guy if Retzlaff can't go. But Jake Retzlaff, if he's able to play, almost had 3,000 yards last year, 20 touchdowns. You want to see him clean up the 12 interceptions, obviously. He also ran for 417 yards and 6 touchdowns. So I think people kind of forget about that. He is a solid runner. He has the ability to move the ball down the field with his legs. And he has pretty good chemistry with the guys coming back at wide receiver. The rushing attack is also in good hands because of his ability to run. You'd like to see them finish better than 68th in 2025 because of the talent they have coming back. So if anything, maybe you need some time to sort out the passing attack. The rushing attack should, in theory, be able to help you in that regard. They should be able to step up. LJ Martin is a massive running back at 6'2", 220 pounds, runs with a ton of physicality, should be a 1,000-yard rusher this year, in my opinion. Had 7 touchdowns last year, 718 yards, averaged 5.2 yards per carry. This is going to be a really fun group. Sione Moa is another guy that will be a contributor. He also averaged 5 yards per carry, 144 yards on those 29 rushes. And then Poki Iowa Haunga is a guy who this staff really likes. And I know they're excited about him coming back. They were able to get him to redshirt. They let him play the 4 games. Were able to keep him off the field, but I think that they were struggling because of how talented he is. He is a guy that I think they're ready to unleash this year. And again, with the depth you have, it might be tough to get him carries, but you still have plenty of talent to rotate, if you will. So the one thing probably keeping LJ Martin back from 1,000-yard season is the fact that they have so many options. Hunga and Moa are going to be 2 solid contributors. They're definitely fighting for RB2 at this point, but they are solid RB2 options. And like I said, that should make this group that finished 68th even better. And the fact that they return what they return up front speaks to what this group is capable of doing in 2025. And depending on the Retzlaff situation, how that plays out, maybe the rushing attack needs to be more prominent. Maybe it needs to step up and carry the team for a little while the quarterback position sorts itself out. So there's some questions that are still going to need to be answered before the season begins. And the rushing attack could be a group that answers some of those questions if they need to sort things out. The wide receivers they have coming back, though, are really fun. And some of them need to just show that they can produce at a higher level. But the options for the quarterbacks should be plenty. There shouldn't be too much concern about the passing attack. There shouldn't be too much concern about what this offense can do through the air. And that includes losing Keelan Marion and Darius Laster. Chase Roberts is back. 854 yards last year, 16.4 yards per catch, 4 touchdowns. One of the most underrated wide receivers in college football. Does not get enough love for what he's capable of doing. He's going to be wide receiver 1. After that, you have good options. But again, how do you elevate your production to another level? Guys like JoJo Phillips, who's 6'5", 205 pounds. That's a guy who averaged 21 yards per catch last year. Can he take his game to another level? If you're getting more targets, can you keep that production up? Are you a verified deep threat, or are you just a small sample size that won't pan out? That's a big question. Parker Kingston, kind of the same thing. 13 catches, 196 yards, 15.1 yards per catch, and 1 touchdown. He's also going to make an impact as a returner. So even though you lose Keelan Marion, you have Parker Kingston coming back. As a punt returner, had 16 returns for 236 yards and 2 touchdowns. So again, explosiveness is not lacking in this group. It's just going to be consistency and production. You bring in Tiger Bachmeier from Stanford. You can't really take his numbers too much into consideration just because Stanford was so bad last year. But he is someone that could play a bigger role. We'll see. The 2 guys, though, that they think are going to be really good, Cody Hagan is expected to take a big step in this offense. So if Phillips and Kingston can't get the job done, Hagan should be a guy that can step in. There's another Nacua that's ready, Tay Nacua, and if he's anything like his brother Puka, then you're going to feel that the next Nacua is probably the better and the best one. So he is someone that could have a bigger role as well. And given the family history, you feel like they're in good hands with him coming back, with him joining this offense and this passing attack. So again, that's a group of 6 that you should feel pretty confident in. You have a couple of guys behind them that also could be part of the rotation, but it's going to be Chase Roberts and whoever else decides that they want to join him. JoJo Phillips and Parker Kingston are probably the top guys. Maybe it's the tight end position. You brought in Carson Ryan from Utah, only 10 catches last year for 113 yards. You also have Ethan Erickson and Noe Moikai coming in. You have guys that could be major contributors in a different way than they were last year, or guys that are stepping into bigger roles. So you have some unproven talent, but that's part of college football now. Guys are going to leave. Guys need to step up, and you just need to figure out who are going to be your top options for these different positions. And again, the quarterback position is kind of up in the air right now. So getting open and making life easy, whether it's Jake Retzlaff, whether it's Hillstead, whoever it's going to be, you need to get open because you might have a guy that's not as confident as Retzlaff. Retzlaff obviously is looking to build his confidence. He's looking to take a step as a passer. You want him to maybe complete more than 60% of his passes. He was at 57.9 last year. This is a group that could be a major contributor more so than they were last year, and that would make this team better as a whole. It opens things up for the rushing attack, a rushing attack that, again, should be in great hands because of the depth that they have. Everything up front obviously is going to play a role as well. So even if you have one position in quarterback that's uncertain right now, you feel that the guys stepping up and stepping into those roles will be in good hands because of the guys up front. The offensive line is going to be fun. When you look at who they have coming back, the tackle position, even though they don't have a ton of starts, Isaiah Jada and Andrew Gentry are big bodies that are ready to play at a high level. You saw Jada play last year, and you also saw Andrew Gentry play for Michigan quite a bit. And Gentry comes in at 6'8", 315 pounds, has 26 games under his belt. You're looking for them to step up in a big way. Sonny Makassini could be another guy, but he's relatively unproven. The guard position opposite of Waylon Lapuaho is going to be up in the air. Maybe it's Joe Brown. Maybe it's somebody else. There are going to be some big positions to fill, and the right guard position is one of them. Bruce Mitchell comes back after a solid year. He'll man the center position. You might see Trevor Pay as a good rotational piece at center as well. So to be determined on that. The tackle positions have a variety of players. Andrew Williams is inexperienced, but really exciting. You also have Austin Luiusa coming back, I should say. Multiple games started in 2024. So you have options. It's just a matter of who's going to be part of that rotation, because the two tackle positions feel like they're filled right now. You feel like you're in good hands, but who are the guys behind him? The guard position opposite, at right guard, you're going to feel like they're in a different place, but you might have the right guys in position to make contributions, and maybe you have more depth than you realize. So this is a group that has the ability to make a major impact on this team. It's just there might be some questions that need to get sorted out for the time being. So it's not just the quarterback position, the wide receivers. There's plenty of questions, but I think if you're BYU, you feel like you did a great job in recruiting, you developed the right players, and then you sprinkled in a couple of transfers that give you better depth or a starter here or there. That is exactly what you need. If not, the defense might be asked to do a little bit more work, just like they did last year for a little bit of the time. You think that they might have to step up in a big way, and they need to grow up front relatively quickly. Now, you have some experienced guys in terms of being on campus for a while. You have some veterans in terms of seniors, juniors, those guys that have been there. But in terms of production, you need guys to step up in a big way. Now, you bring in Keanu Tanavasa from Utah. You bring in Justin Kirkland from Oklahoma State. Those are two underrated defensive tackles. They're very capable of making big plays. At the edge, though, is where you might be a little bit concerned. Bodie Schoonover only had 4 tackles last year. Logan Lutui, good frame at 6'2", 255 pounds. A little bit more productive, 13 tackles, 4 tackles for loss. But that position is relatively green in terms of their experience. Maybe a guy like Ephraim Asiata, the son of Matt Asiata, could be a guy that steps up in a big way. I know they really like him. He has very explosive traits. He's someone that could be a part of that. Then you bring in other talent to back up some of these guys. And even at the tackle position, you have guys coming in as well. So Anisi Purcell comes in from Southern Utah. He could be someone that steps in a big way. They have pretty good depth at these positions in terms of options, but how many of them are quality options? I think that's kind of a theme with BYU this year, is how many of the depth pieces they have are quality options. Now, the defensive line took a little bit more of a hit in terms of experience, but I think that they brought in players to replace some of those guys, and they also have young guys that they believe may have a higher ceiling than some of the guys that they lost. So, again, you kind of have to grow up. And that's really what I mean. It's not a maturity thing. It's just you are expected to play a bigger role How are you going to do that? You're expected to take this step. Are you going to be able to handle the pressure to do that? Are you going to be able to take that step? Do you have it in you to play a bigger role? The defensive line, which is such an important position in college football, is a big question right now for BYU. And they thought that they, addressed some of those concerns with the players they brought in. But right now it's kind of to be determined with that group. That being said, the guys behind them should make their life a little bit easier. This is an experienced group that is loaded with talent. And even though you lose Harrison Taggart, you still feel really good about the trio you have coming back. Isaiah Glasker had a big year, 70 tackles, 15 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks, and even picked off 3 passes. Jack Kelly's a name that people are going to get to know a little bit better. 51 tackles, 10 tackles for loss, and 5 sacks. The guy who stepped in for Taggart, Siali Esera, 6'3", 245 pounds. Didn't have a ton of experience last year, obviously, with an injury, but this is someone who they're really excited to see his potential finally hit the field, and someone who's going to play a bigger role for them, and they're excited about what he could be. You also have other guys like Joe Bryant Stroller could play a bigger role as well. 11 tackles last year. Same thing with Miles Hall. After that is where you feel like you maybe have some other pieces that need to step up, some depth pieces that need to be established. So this is a group that's in good hands, though. I think that you have less concerns about the linebacker position than you do the defensive line, because defensive line, you're looking for multiple starters as well as depth pieces. Linebacker, you're set at starters. There aren't any questions about who's going to start. It's just who's going to rotate in when they need somebody to. Who's going to be the first guy that steps up? Who's going to step up if someone gets hurt? Those are the questions that the linebacker group has to figure out. But again, you feel like you're in pretty good hands. The secondary is kind of in a similar place where you lose a couple players, Marky Collins, Jacob Robinson, you lose Crew Wakely, but I think that the core group they have coming back feel like they're in a great place to be successful once again. The corners are going to be Maury Bamba and Evan Johnson. They had good experience last year. Johnson picked off 2 passes. Bamba has a good frame at 6'3", 190 pounds. So 2 guys that are really ready to take on those bigger roles. Again, who replaces Jacob Robinson is going to be a big question. That's a second team all Big 12 selection that you lose. Marquette Collins was an honorable mention, but these 2 guys in Bamba and Johnson did play quite a bit. So you're feeling like you're in a good place with that experience. You have guys that know what they're doing. They understand the system. They understand what this team needs to win. And they're going to just play bigger roles. Then the safety position, Raider DeMooney, Tanner Wall, good experience as well. Wall picked up 3 passes last year. DeMooney had 26 tackles, 3 tackles for loss. Great first name as well. So that goes in his favor. Obviously, a great first name automatically means you're going to be really good on the field, of course. But he is a solid player, though. Raider DeMooney is someone who is going to be really fun to watch in 2025 because of his experience last year. And I think overall, this is a secondary that is in a good place, even with the talent you lose. Now, the cornerback position probably has the 2 biggest questions, but similar to the linebackers, I think you know who the starters are going to be. Now, you have pretty good depth behind them too, even if it is relatively inexperienced. Marcus McKenzie and Therian Alexander are 2 guys that will probably play into the rotation at corner. Same with Jaden Dunlap. Tommy Prasas and a couple other guys might play at safety. It depends on the health of the safeties. It depends on the rotation that they need. It depends on the pacing of the games that they're playing. But this is a group that finished 20th last year, and they expect to be right around that again. Even with some of the departures they lose, they expect to be in a certain place time and time again. And that'll be really interesting to watch. How they meet those goals is probably going to be a big question. But for now, they feel like they've done a really good job of getting in position to be successful once again. Retaining the talent, like I said, they did a really good job of keeping guys on campus. They did a really good job of developing their players where they don't need to hit the transfer portal as much. So this is a group that should be locked and loaded to make another run. The schedule that they have might be a little bit more challenging, but it's only because the Big 12 is so unpredictable. The non-conference schedule I'm not worried about. This is not really a concern when you have Portland State, Stanford, ECU right off the bat. To me, those are 3 wins for BYU. And with an over and under at 7.5, you're well on your way to beating that. Colorado, we'll see what they're looking like at this point. We'll get a good idea of how they look early in the season, but that's a team that could be down this year. West Virginia is a team that's going under a new coach. Arizona was bad last year. So you're realistically you could be looking at a 6-0 start. That's another hot start for this team. Utah's going to be better. That's a rivalry game. So that's always going to be tough regardless of where Utah's at. The following week, you have to travel to Ames, Iowa and play Iowa State. If you know nothing about Ames, Iowa, playing on the road in Ames is not fun. It is not easy, and teams struggle mightily when they face the Cyclones on the road. After that, you get a bye week, and then you get Texas Tech and TCU in back-to-back weeks. Oh, by the way, Texas Tech is on the road, and that's a team that expects to compete for a Big 12 championship and make a run at the college football playoff. Obviously, everybody knows the roster they put together, the portal class that they put together, and their NIL. They're obviously talking about that. TCU and Josh Hoover could be a massive problem this year. I just did their deep dive. I'm very high on Josh Hoover. I think that he's one of the best quarterbacks in college football. That could be a big test. Cincinnati, UCF, 2 more teams that are probably going to be near the bottom of the Big 12, but at this point, we're going to know if that's true or not. So when you look at the schedule right now, UCF, Cincinnati, Arizona, West Virginia, Colorado, you face 5 teams that are considered near the bottom of the conference or some of the worst teams in the conference. You also play a team in ECU that you should beat, though they will be better. It's also on the road. Stanford, going through a new coaching staff, it feels like that situation is real rough. And then Portland State. Right there, those are 8 potential wins. The games that you just have to figure out are the Utah game, Iowa State, Texas Tech, and TCU. So 7.5 does make sense. So that's why I have the ceiling at 10-2. Even if everything's going right, I think that it's the Big 12. So you got at least 2 losses, it feels like, this year. 7-5, though, feels like it's the floor. I don't think this is a team that bottoms out by any means, and neither do you guys. 52% of you think they're going to finish 1st through 4th. 43% think 5th through 8th, and then apparently Utah fans are in there voting for 13th through 16th at 5%. So most of you think they're going to be a top team in the Big 12 once again. That seems to be where they're probably going to end up. That seems to be where this team will play out. Again, there's a lot of questions. The biggest one is going to be what happens with Retzlaff. Obviously, not a great situation. They're working through that. If he plays, he makes the biggest difference on the success of this team. If he does not play, the under has the potential to hit for this team. But I think this team, even without him, has enough talent to win 8 games or more. They have the ability to do that. And again, that will the quarterback position is going to play a huge role in that. And if he's able to play, great. If not, they'll figure things out. That's what they've done. This is a resilient group. Kalani Sitake has done an incredible job of getting this team to play at a level that most people don't expect. And sometimes you're going to have to deal with adversity. And BYU is no stranger to that. It's just going to be really hard if one of the players that you don't have is your quarterback. Plain and simple. The quarterback position obviously is a vital position to a team's success, but they have the supporting cast in place where if you don't have your starting quarterback for a couple of games, the entire season, that everything's not going to unravel. So you're in a good place. It's just you're playing in a conference that's very deep in terms of quality talent and the number of contenders that are here. This also is a BYU team that wants to potentially win the Big 12, and that'll be interesting to see if they're capable of. They just missed it last year, and if they're able to do that, you're looking at Coach of the Year for Sitake, and you're looking at a team that is going to get into the college football playoff and probably will be a problem for whoever they face.